Hello, everybody. Welcome to another CMSWire LinkedIn Live talking about, you guessed it, CX, customer experience. That's what we do here. If you don't know us, Dom Nicastro, managing editor of CMSWire, and I am happy and honored to be joined by CX thought leader, CX consultant, Katie Stabler, founder of Cultivate. Katie, how you doing?
I am great on All Hallows Eve, this spooky of day. Very good, thank you.
That's right. Happy Halloween, number one.
Thank you
Do you
very much.
have the
Yep,
candy lined up for the kiddos?
100%. Pumpkins are out, candy's ready.
Beautiful. Is the light on or off outside? Because you are on a LinkedIn Live right now. And if the kids want to come in for the LinkedIn Live, give their thoughts on CX, that's great. But you might want to shut the light off and let them know you're not there. Or do you have a teammate in the house that's going to do that for you?
Unfortunately, the light is off, but there is a note on the door to say come back in an hour.
Oh,
So
there you go.
just setting expectations.
I'm gonna hit up the Stabler house in an hour. That's for sure. I'm not letting that go by. They got the good stuff at that house. So, all right, Katie. So we're gonna talk all things CX today, especially in this rough economy. Kind of give some tips, some steps of where the focus should be in customer experience right now in these turbulent times. Obviously, timely conversation. But before we get into our list, we have a top 5 list of what to do. I love lists. People watching these LinkedIn lives know me. I love my lists, but before we get into that, I wanted to know a little bit more about you and what you do and how you arrived in your role and what your company does.
Cool, thank you. Well, I'm based in the UK in green leafy Cheshire, and I've been running my own CX consultancy for 2.5 years now. I started just at the peak of the pandemic. Great idea. But but I've worked in customer experience for about a decade now, and I actually started in the not-for-profit sector, which I think is the most organic place for customer experience. You might not be in a role which has the word customer experience in it, but when you're working for charities, everything you do is for your user. So I think incredibly customer-centric. But interestingly, my very first customer experience entitled role was the head of customer experience for a debt collection company, which isn't synonymous with CX particularly.
How do you harass in the right exact tone and manner someone and interrupt their days and remind them that they owe you money? Like, how do you pull that?
Yeah.
Actually, that's a great place to start. I mean, what were the lessons learned for you in CX there? It's got to be some kind of playbook for setting up some kind of CX program.
Oh yeah, I mean you're thrown right in the deep end. I mean, I'd worked for debt support charities, so that's why I transitioned into debt collection because I could see that there was an awful lot of good to be done in that area. And I think customer experience is important for every organization, but no more in companies such as that, where actually a good customer experience can lift the weight off someone's shoulders, relieve the stress and worry that it's taken, maybe weeks to pick up the phone and have the confidence to call a company like that, versus a terrible customer experience where you just don't feel cared for, you're scared, you're worried. And ultimately, the business result for that company means if you've got a worried customer who's never going to pick up the phone or contact you again, well, then you're never going to collect that debt. So, there's a very good reason to have good customer experience in organizations like that.
Yeah, in those situations, it's probably pretty important to empower the person on the receiving end and kind of put them in control in a sense. Like, hey, what can you do? What can we do together here instead of being the aggressor? And like, hey, this is a bill, you got to pay it. What are you doing? No one likes to be approached like that for sure.
Yeah,
So
100%.
yeah. So let's get into our, let's get right into that top 5 here. And folks, we encourage comments, critical ones, agreeable, whatever you want. We want you to drive the discussion too. So if you got any comments in there, and if you missed this, you're watching it later, hey, reach out to us, make comments on the post that we post up and stuff like that. So we always want that to be interactive, as they say. So, hey, let's get right into the list. We got five ways and 5 things a CX leader needs to do now in this tight economy. We're going to combine number 1 and 2 to start off, and that is know that now more than ever, CX is crucial. And number 2, remember, loyalty is skin deep. All right, let's unpack those 2, Katie. Go for it. You start.
Yeah, so I love the conversation around loyalty and customer experience. One of my true passions in this space is the psychology of customer experience, and loyalty is so heavily embedded into that. Um, but there is a time when even loyalty isn't enough. You can have the most loyal customers, but in times where actually finances are difficult and we all have to make difficult choices, you have to ask the question, can you rest on your laurels? Is the loyalty that you've built with your customer base going to be enough to keep them retained? And sometimes the truth of the matter is, depending on who your customer base is in tough times like this, no, maybe it isn't. So I think one of the key things that customer experience leaders, professionals, whatever capacity you're working in the business, is remember that loyalty is only skin deep, and don't just rely on the previous loyalty you've had through very tough times. And that connects to the now more than ever part, is customer experience is crucial. So I don't know if you've been seeing kind of discussions taking place around customer experience in the recession, but customer experience is pretty new to a lot of companies. And I say that lightly, but I mean, compared to the likes of HR and quality assurance, which have just been around for millennia, customer experience is pretty new. And there's that risk of last in first out when it comes to if organizations are making tough choices. And that is not the case. Now is not the time to lose customer experience. Now is the time to be focusing on it even more than ever.
Do you think that, do you see a lot of people approach you and say, "Hey, look, we're struggling with the balance between customer acquisition and customer retention, where retention really, coincides with loyalty, right?" Like that whole balance of, is this a time in turbulent economic times to go all in on customer acquisition, or is this the time to go all in on customer retention, or is that even a smart question, because you should have a healthy balance of both?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be like the flaky answer, isn't it? But a healthy balance of both, for sure. I mean, you need to. But again, this comes back to a bigger conversation that I like around what kind of culture you have as an organization and what kind of customer you're trying to attract. And ultimately, the people who have a strong affiliation to you, a strong connection to you as a brand, they're going to be the ones who will try and stay loyal through thick and thin. You can continue to put your efforts into acquiring customers. They might be a customer temporarily and then scoot off to the next because they haven't built that loyalty. So I think the long game in customer experience and business growth would be to focus on retention, because that's where you're going to get the customer lifetime value, for one of chucking in an ICX acronym.
Yeah. It's funny, like, as you say, CX is crucial more than ever. Why do we have to drill that message home? Is that because we just is that because leaders, like C-suite leaders, are putting it in the back burner in favor of, listen, we gotta get some numbers in here. We gotta meet sales fast. I don't care how we do it. We gotta meet these quarterly numbers before things go way south. Why is that? Why do we have to remind people that customer experience is important? You know what I mean? Like, it seems like it's obvious.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, right? It could be a bit of business bravado. I know
Mm.
better. We're still here. We still have customers. So why do we need to put in extra attention and effort? Hello, Gray. Um,
Hey, Gray,
so
what kind of pup?
he's an
He
Alaskan Malamute,
he looks
big old
like,
Alaskan Mal.
this is an old school movie, but he looks like Nanook in The Lost Boys,
Lost
which is
Boys.
appropriate because it's Halloween.
Yeah.
Great Halloween
Well,
movie.
that was my husband's inspiration for the love of these dogs. Hence, yes.
For
So
real.
yeah,
It
Nanook
was Nanook.
for real.
Okay.
Yeah, the
That
Lost
was
Boys.
live, folks. We didn't plan that.
He's probably going to be back.
Yeah.
But yeah, where were we? Leaders, business leaders.
Yeah. And why you have to
Yeah,
drill
a bit
that
of
message
bravado.
home. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think, it's one of these things. It's with regards to prioritization, it always seems like customer experience has a difficulty being prioritized on the to-do list. And I think some of that can come down to, and speaking of Halloween, the mysterious nature of customer experience. I think there's still a lot of companies who actually just haven't figured out how to design and practice customer experience in a way that actually drives benefit for the organization. So it almost sits on this peripheral of something we know we should be doing. We'd like to do it.
Yeah.
We'll maybe assign a little bit of resource to it, but it's just going to sit there for now until we can figure out how to take it more seriously.
Yeah, and I would imagine a lot of brands maybe you interact with or just in general say, no, we do customer experience. We have a call center. We measure those calls. We do NPS, and we have agent retention practices. By the way, all these things, good, right? But mistaking that for the big picture is a problem, I would imagine.
Yeah, the strategy piece, knowing how it all intertwines together, how it all connects, how it should work together. And also, when you work in organizations, I always find that there are some key themes. A lot of companies are pretty good at collecting data, actually not very good at doing much with it, whether that's because they don't know how to interpret the data, they don't have the skills or the resources or the time, or that they do know how to interpret it and they've got the insight, but again they just don't have the resource to do any action on the back of it. Because it's one thing about actually gathering that insight and understanding what's happening in the world of your customer experience. It's a whole other thing actually then implementing a program of improvement actions on the back of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, multitude of factors.
Cool. Katie, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
You can hear?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I got a little scary, like you're on mute, dude. All right, good. We're good. All right, well, thanks for that. Let's go on. Let's move on to number 3 in our list of 5 things CX leaders need to do right now in this rough economy, and that is stop viewing speaking of contact centers, stop viewing contact centers as cost centers. All right, that's going to take a lot of convincing for executives to move past that way of thought. How do you get that? How do you get
Yeah.
that done?
Well, I mean, they're a necessary evil, right? Or that's the way they're perceived, have been traditionally. Like they're just something you have to put money into in order to, functionally be available for your customers. And obviously, there's that conversation which has particularly been progressed through the time of the pandemic around digitizing CX and having more kind of self-automated, self-help channels available. All fine, all the time and place. But during a recession, you have customers who are needing to make changes. You have customers who are uncertain, who lack confidence, who need some reassurance, and heck, maybe just need some contact and some personalization. And your customer center should be, that's what it should be called, customer center.
That's a good
Your
one. That's a
contact
good one.
center. Yeah, that should be
Oh.
primed right now to offer all of that reassurance and support that your customers are desperate for at the moment.
Yeah, contact center is kind of old, like, right? Like, it's like the contact. Like, is a Gen Z person like relate to that? You know what I mean? Like, do Gen Zers talk to each other? Like, oh, I gotta call the contact center. Like after I go on Instagram Live. Like, it's not.
Exactly.
They don't speak like that. Maybe it's time for a change there. But speaking of contact centers as cost centers, I mean, there is a problem. Like, it's like with retaining these contact center agents, right? There is a big problem. And a lot of folks I talk to in CX leadership, kind of attribute that to metrics that are just unfair. Resolution. These are all important analytics. Resolution, time it took to resolve an issue. Obviously, all important. But it feels like they're just measured by these hard, cold metrics. Are we needing as CX leaders to do better in the contact center metrics department? Is that a good place to start with, like, agent retention matters?
Dom, 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much, isn't there? There's, like you say, there are these metrics, which again they're pretty old school. You've seen them around for a long time, and what are they measuring? I really like how some of the conversation I'm hearing is progressing from these kind of key performance indicators, which sometimes, as you've alluded to, can be quite toxic to the environment. Speed to resolution actually. Does the customer care if they're on the phone for 3 minutes or 12 minutes? If they have a great, helpful conversation, they get a good outcome and they don't have to come back. There's loads of conversations around that. But I'm a big fan of the conversations that are taking place around changing these KPIs to more experience indicators. So actually really getting to the crux of what is important to the customer and then changing the metrics to measure those outcomes. But I mean, metrics aside, look at systems. How often are our agents debilitated by having to navigate through 10 different screens and 3 different platforms and having to tick boxes to say that they've done a bit of assurance on a call? There's so much that inhibits our agents from being able to deliver a good customer experience. And hey, you don't get a good customer experience without a good employee experience, do you?
Right. And I love like those moments. It hasn't happened in a while. Going to in-person conferences. We host our own conferences. We've done virtual since COVID. We're going back into the real world, the human world, the physical world, as they call it. Next year in May, we're going to Austin, CMSWire Connect, little plug there, right? Exciting. You should go. So it's like, I loved watching my colleagues, my team members interact with customers, and I call them customers. Those are the people that come to our conferences, people that read our website. I love that because that's the feedback I give them. Like, what a great ambassador for the brand you are. Like you just made people feel at ease. That's the kind of thing we should talk to contact center agents about. Putting them on a pedestal and showing the rest of the team, listen to this call, everybody. Let's have a quick training, a 20-minute training. Listen to this call that your colleague did. And let's talk about it. Put them in the spotlight, embrace them. I think that's a heck of a way to celebrate what a contact center agent does. It's the most thankless job in the world. I always say this. No one calls the contact center and says, I just want to let you know you're doing a great job. Right?
True.
No one does that. Everyone yells at you all day. So you got to celebrate them.
You do, 100%. And I've just been delivering some training to an organization, and the focus very much of that was that the frontline agents, they're the catalyst for delivering great CX. It doesn't matter how much effort you put into your process in the background, getting the right tooling and equipment, making your user face for your customers pretty and lovely and easy to use. Actually, if they then speak to a customer service representative who doesn't represent the brand in the way that they need to, that just breaks everything. So you need to train, upskill, empower your agents to be able to do that. And then it's infectious. Like you say, once you deliver a great experience, you feel the feels of giving a good customer experience, you want to do more, it catches. There's a virtuous cycle.
Yeah. Ask me who the CEO of T-Mobile is. I will never be able to tell you unless I Googled it. Ask me who the last agent's name I talked to at T-Mobile was, and I will tell you it's Jennifer, right? Like those people way more intimately and on a level of customer service than you ever would anyone in the C-suite. Yet all the focus is on the C-suite inside the company, right? We're not empowering agents. And that T-Mobile example was obviously just a random one. All right, that's a good conversation about contact centers. We're hearing about that a lot. Agent retention, it's so crucial. It seems like in this day and age, and who wants to constantly deal with turnover and rehiring and stuff like that? It's so costly and just such a burden. All right,
it is.
Let's move on. We got 2 more to go from Katie Stabler here, and let's go on to our number 4 thing that CX leaders need to do out of 5, and that is change the way you're looking at NPS. Oh no, NPS is our gold star. We can't change that. That's like what we do. That's our customer experience program. It's called NPS.
Look, I mean, NPS, right? It's a dangerous topic to talk about in the CX world because you've got the absolute advocates, and then, I mean, let's stick with the NPS language. You've got the detractors. I like NPS when it's being used well, but the reason I brought it up in this conversation, maybe a little bit provocatively, is because we just, and it's not just NPS actually, it's all of the metrics. You see your customer effort score, your lovely new earned growth rate from our good old Fred, who's introduced NPS 0.2. It's all of them. It's just the fact that we are so continuously obsessed with the number, the measure. And again, it should apply all the time in CX, but again, now more than ever, that isn't what's important. It isn't, is your NPS positively correlating with your financial growth? It's not about that right now. It shouldn't be about that right now. It should be, if you're collecting customer feedback and insight, it should be about what they're actually telling you that's behind the number. And that is what you should be utilizing to make sure that you are continually delivering a great customer experience during a time where undoubtedly your customers' needs are changing. This should be the focus. I'm not saying abandon NPS, abandon your CSAT and forget about the number and don't benchmark and don't measure. I'm just saying at the moment, more than ever, it's the qualitative info that sits behind it that is the most important, the sentiment.
Do you even need it? I mean, for some organizations, I mean, is it the worst thing not to have that?
No, I've worked for organizations who don't use NPS. I mean, they use something. I've always worked with an organization that has a metric, and I do think metrics have value. I think, they are just that touch point, aren't they, to say whereabouts are we right now and are we improving? But I'm actually a really big fan of the customer health score. I don't know if you've come across that. Like
don't ask me to explain it. Don't ask me to explain it. You explain it.
Explain it in the most simplistic way I can. I'll probably over-explain this. You find out what your key outcome is. What is the most important thing that you want for your customers or your customers want? And you, behind that, develop a number of bespoke metrics that measure directly that outcome. And it can be, 2 metrics, it could be 10, whatever. It's just, what are the key things that you're doing in your business that reach that outcome? And then you score them and weight them appropriately. And you can touch point on this measure at whatever frequency you choose, weekly, bi-weekly, bi-monthly, 6 monthly, whatever. Totally bespoke to you and your customers. It's not a generic off-the-shelf measure. It is something that you can test in real time, which often you can't do NPS. It tends to be kind of more, annually. And it's just directly related to customer outcome. So I think customer health score is a very healthy way to measure your customer experience.
Yeah, that sounds right. And with the NPS, I mean, do customers even care? Like, I wonder if there's a metric to show, how many times a customer actually said, "I bought from you because of your NPS score." I wonder if that even is out there. There's statistics on that.
Surely not. I can't imagine. In fact, that's a question I've never come across before. But I don't think they're not promoted, are they? Net promoter scores. You get them in industry benchmark reports, but even those you often have to be signed up. So I don't think as a customer that's what you're looking at, is it? And also, I actually do like Fred Reichfield's new version of NPS, the earned growth rate, because again, it also comes back to NPS is a loyalty measure, right? It's would you recommend? It doesn't actually tell you if any of those recommendations actually happened and whether or not a recommendation turned into a customer.
Right.
Whereas the earned growth rate does. But it took 20 years to get NPS off the ground, right? So is it going to take another 20 years to get earned growth rate up and running?
Yeah, hopefully not. Yeah, it just, to me, it's like you were mentioning, the customer anecdotes, the feedbacks. I mean, my wife shops. I've never heard her say NPS before. I mean, she'll talk to her friends. She'll look at influencers. She's big into makeup and beauty, and that she'll be watching influencers all the time, get the latest trends. So she's wants to hear from like-minded customers, right? Like-minded folks who do what she loves to do and get ideas from them, even more so than the brand itself. I mean, sure, when the influencer says, and this palette is check, she's writing that and she's buying it later, right? So that's to me, getting that direct, customer to customer, influencer to customer. If you're so blessed to be able to afford an influencer for your brand, it seems like a real popular thing to do now, for sure.
Oh yeah. I wonder if that could be a thing, influencers utilizing and promoting NPS. So sending you item to buy, and this is a company that has a 10 out of
yeah. But I mean, my wife would say, I don't care. Just show me how to put it on my eyelid or whatever she does, right? So yeah, she's all, she wouldn't be invested in that. So all right, a few minutes to go here. Let's look at our last one, Katie, and that is, so the last one in terms of what CX leaders need to do in a recession, looping back to loyalty. So small losses lead to big gains. And I know organizations are certainly dealing with a lot of losses right now. So this is a relevant one. Let's unpack that one.
Yeah. So I think that this is a little bit of where goodwill and giving back can go a long way in customer experience. So I mentioned it before, I'm a huge fan of the conversation around psychology and CX. And love, emotion. This is all very fluffy. Not everyone likes to talk about it in customer experience. Obviously, it's quite hard to make tangible, but what we make a customer feel, that's what they remember. Whether that's a good feeling or a bad feeling, they're the nodes that connect in our memory that build up our perception, which creates what customer experience is. So if you can do something that makes a customer feel something positive and strong, they are going to remember you. Peak Endrall, Daniel Kahneman. So during this time, actually, small things can make a big difference to a customer. And I mean, I just got an email from a company, a UK company called Able and Cole. They're like an organic food store. They're pretty expensive, and I'm sure they're the kind of company that would suffer in recession because it's an easy one to make a cutback. They proactively just sent out an email, and it was nothing but just an email that said, "We recognise times are tough. Times are tough for us right now. We're going to do what we can to support you, and we appreciate your loyalty." Teeny weeny bit of goodwill to customers, and that email stuck in my mind, and I'll continue to try and use them for as long as I can. During the pandemic, I worked for a company which was a membership company, and they just said, "Look, as a member, if you cannot afford our subscription anymore, come to us, let us know. You don't have to prove it or anything, just come to us and let us know you can't afford it. We will give you free membership for as long as you need it." And they gave free memberships, and there was a worry that people might take advantage, but we certainly didn't see that reflected in the numbers. But what that meant is that company retained those members, and then when they were in a position to start paying again, they did. Whereas if they'd have lost, they may never have returned again. So this conversation around giving a little now, maybe making a little loss right now, will pay dividends in the fact that you are going to retain and keep these customers because they'll remember what you're doing in difficult times.
I remember that March 2020 to November 2020 time frame where companies were doing a lot of that. They were doing a lot of and the word of the day was empathy. Remember that was the word of the day. People are still using it. Yes, it matters. Do I have critical thoughts on the word empathy? Yes, I do, because you have to show it, actually literally show it instead of just saying we're empathetic, but as a company. But I remember that. And I remember those companies giving these great deals, free memberships. We're okay. Skip your bill for 6 months. I do remember thinking, how are companies kind of come out of that, though? That would be important. That would be important to measure how a company that gave you free memberships for 6 months, what was their game plan to say, hi, the pandemic's kind of subsiding. We're going to need some money now, right? Like that was a real test in customer experience. I wonder how most brands came out of that,
Do you know, there's a company, I think, called Watermark who do some great CX research, and they released, it's an annual bit of research that they do, but they released on the back of the pandemic that actually the companies that were considered customer experience leaders actually were more likely to recover out of the pandemic than the opposite. Because again, it goes back to that part that yes, you're always going to lose some customers, but if you can do everything you can to retain the ones that you have, they're going to stay with you. So again, I think it comes back to that the small losses. I'm not saying give away everything for free for a year, but small losses can make big gains. So you do what you can, don't you? And just like customers are pinching the penny, so are organizations. But offering flexibility, doing what you can for those customers who need it, I think is just as crucial as it was during the time of the pandemic.
Yeah, awesome. I'll probably get in trouble if I don't mention our own report too. State of Digital Customer Experience, CMSWire. Put that in your head. It came out last week, and it's exciting talking about the pandemic and how we're coming out of it and what's still important with digital customer experience. So check that out. Great job by our research team. Kate, I think we're out of time. I'm going to let you leave and just give us a quick rundown of what kind of candy you're throwing out there tonight. Come on, you have like the major league ones like Snickers, Reese's, Kit Kats, or are you going somewhere else with this?
Oh no, I'm the jelly sweet fan. So lots of packs of jellies.
Jelly. So you like
candies? Yeah.
Did you make something? No, you just.
No, they're like the chewy gummy ones.
Okay,
although I do love to cook, but
they're in the ballpark. They're not major leagues, but they're in the ballpark. That's just one humble.
We've created an experience, though. The outside, there's loads of crazy cobwebs going on. So it's not just about the sweets; it's about the experience. Remember, experience.
That was the effort in the Stabler household. It was not the product; it was the experience. Okay, you're walking the walk as a CX consultant.
For sure.
Good stuff. Katie Stabler, Cultivate. Can't thank you enough for joining the CMSWire LinkedIn Live. We got these going often, so come back and follow us on CMSWire on LinkedIn. Hear more about it from the land of customer experience. Can't thank you enough, Katie. Have a good one. Happy Halloween.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate it.